Most people think wealth changes life slowly, like every extra dollar simply improves the same experience a little more. But money does not actually work that way psychologically. Human behavior changes in stages, and one of the biggest shifts happens much earlier than most people expect. Not at $100,000, not at $1,000,000, but around $20,000 in savings. The reason this number matters has very little to do with luxury. $20,000 is not enough to completely change your lifestyle, but it is often enough to change your relationship with fear. And that changes almost everything. When somebody has little or no savings, every financial decision carries pressure. A car repair feels stressful. A delayed paycheck feels dangerous. Even small expenses create mental tension because there is no real margin for error. Over time, this creates what psychologists call scarcity thinking, where the brain becomes focused on immediate survival instead of long-term planning. This is why financial stress affects behavior so deeply. People under pressure usually prioritize certainty over opportunity. They stay in jobs they hate because they cannot afford instability. They delay important decisions because failure feels too risky. Their thinking becomes reactive instead of strategic. But once a person builds a meaningful financial buffer, something subtle changes. The constant background pressure begins to fade. Financial problems stop feeling catastrophic and start feeling manageable. And for many people, that shift begins around the $20,000 mark because it often represents several months of basic living expenses. That breathing room changes the way the brain operates. Instead of thinking week to week, people begin thinking months or years ahead. Decisions become less emotional and more intentional. This is the first major psychological transition from survival mode to stability. It is also the point where compounding finally becomes emotionally visible. A 10% return on $1,000 barely feels important, but a 10% return on $20,000 suddenly feels real. Progress becomes noticeable, and once people can actually see momentum, motivation changes. This matters because the beginning of wealth building is psychologically difficult. Early saving requires discipline while producing very small visible rewards. But once savings reach a level where growth becomes noticeable, the system starts reinforcing itself. Confidence improves, behavior improves, long-term thinking becomes easier. Perhaps the most important change, though, is identity. Saving $20,000 usually requires months or years of consistency, delayed gratification, and controlled spending. Over time, those repeated behaviors change the way a person sees themselves. They stop identifying as someone constantly struggling with money and start identifying as someone capable of building stability. And that identity shift affects every future decision. The interesting part is that moving from $0 to $20,000 often feels psychologically bigger than moving from $20,000 to $100,000 because the first shift changes structure. It changes how uncertainty feels, how risk is perceived, and how decisions are made. Ultimately, $20,000 is not powerful because it makes someone rich. It is powerful because it creates breathing room, it reduces fear, it expands options, and once survival stops controlling every decision, life begins to feel fundamentally different. Not easier overnight, but finally manageable.